Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to What's Up With That, the show that brings you interesting people, places, cultures, and subcultures here in the South Bay, the San Francisco Bay Area, the state of California, and beyond. And tonight, in a special edition, What's Up With Gabriel's Journey? What's up with growing up in a community, our community, that is infested with gangs? And how was Gabriel saved? Well, tonight we have a very special guest who has a very special story. A story that has elements of violence, a story where he was victimized and stabbed, and is here to tell how he got through this whole thing, through his faith, through his belief that came to him that there was a higher power, that there was some way that he and his life was worth saving. So many people today walk around and they're living in these gangs and they wonder, there is no hope for me. Well, I want you to think about that, and especially at the end of the show, I think you will believe that there is hope for all of us. There's always hope. Please welcome to our show tonight, Gabriel Ochoa. How you doing, Gabriel?
Good, and you?
Thank you so much. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for coming on. Well, let's start off from the beginning. Tell me about your childhood. Let's talk about.
Well, started off my childhood was, it was, as far as I can remember, it was good.
Mm-hmm.
But, as I got older, it started getting, bumpy because, my parents weren't there.
Mm-hmm.
So, you had to go live with your grandma. And from there, it's like you basically do whatever you want.
Right.
So, like, the streets are my second family.
Mm-hmm.
So the friends were always around. So that's who I hung around with. And I started, hanging around them, getting in gangs, selling drugs.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what started for me into the streets.
So, as a teenager, you were basically then on your own. Who ran the house? Who ran the house where you were at?
Well, it was just like basically anybody was like, partying in and out.
Uh-huh.
My grandma was there, but, you don't listen to, your grandma.
Right.
You're just like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, I'll do better, I'll do good.
Yeah.
So it's like probably I ran the house, because I didn't care about nothing. So it's just like go one ear and out the other.
Right.
So it's just basically like, oh, okay, I could do whatever I want.
Yeah, that's a huge responsibility, though, in its own way. And it is weird how, grandmas, it is your grandma.
Yeah.
It's difficult because, they want the best for you, but in a way that they sometimes I think in situations like they really don't know what to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So what would she say to you when, would she, oh, Gabriel.
She would say, better stop or I'll put you in juvenile hall.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to call the cops on your friends. I know they're wanted or, something like that. But, I'd be like, oh, we're not doing nothing. We were. But, my reaction, we're not doing nothing. Why are you going to call? We're just having a good time out here trying to enjoy life.
Mm-hmm.
That's my reaction I would tell her.
Yeah, that argument doesn't go too far with grandmas, does it? So, your family, so how many people are in your family? How many people were at grandma's house?
Well, it was just basically me and my brother and my uncles. So the things I learned were kind of from them too. Seeing them, drinking, smoking weed, doing drugs, fighting. Basically it just like a generation curse. It just fell upon me and my brother. So once we seen that, we thought it was cool. So we just got into what they were doing. So it was like, oh, my uncles are doing it. So, it's all right for us to do it.
Right. Well, that's the way children learn. So what would be, give me an example of what would be a typical day at your grandma's house.
Well, get up and open the beer. Get up, open the beer, or smoke some weed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you got uncles, and they're all doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And so they would say, and what would they say to you? Would they say,
give me a hint. Like just basically, you gonna share with me?
Yeah.
I always share with you, So it's just basically like, it wasn't, the discipline wasn't there. It was just more like, here, follow the leader type.
Right.
Yeah.
And so how serious did this get at times? Was there ever situations where it was like out of control at the house?
Well, for my uncles, because, they'll have their friends, then they get drunk, start fighting with their friends.
Okay.
And, you know, we'd be little watching it, be scared, like, oh man, you know.
Yeah.
They'd be like, just watch, you know, just watch.
They're going to teach you what to do?
Yeah, you know, just watch, because something like this comes up, you don't know what to do. So we just watch, you know. Us being little, you know, we don't know no better. We just want to be, you know, like nosy, like, oh,
yeah.
let me see.
You're almost like, it's
you know,
it's
like a movie.
Entertainment, huh?
Yeah. Like, I don't have to watch TV, I'm going to go watch them.
So then you started, okay, you know, moving on to, again, you know, going, there's an old phrase, you know, heading down this spiral path of decline or whatever. And I mean, a lot of it can be cliche, but what people don't understand is that this stuff really does happen. You know, and society would rather say, you know, I'd just rather not deal with this stuff and let's just leave it to somebody else. But did you have people coming in that tried to intervene at all?
Well, it would be like teachers. They would be like, oh, you know, you're doing this the wrong way, you know. Or they'll say you never amount to nothing. So that kind of was like stuck in my head. Well, you know, I might as well keep on doing because I ain't going to amount to nothing. But then, you know, you would have like other family members that would say, shouldn't be doing this, you know, one day you're going to get hurt, you know. But you don't listen. Because like I said, it goes one ear and out the other. And it's just like, I don't care, you know. You know, this is the life I want to live. This is my life, you know. At a young age, you know, looking at all the stuff that's going on, you're like, who cares, you know?
Well, especially for someone to come up to you and say, you're never going to amount to anything, you know, and your response to that would be what? My
response would be like, well then, you know, if I don't amount to nothing, then, you know, why should I learn anything? You know, I'll get all my, you know, knowledge from the streets. I'll learn better from there, you know. So what's the use of going to school? So my whole time was just focused on the streets, you know, instead of school. I would go to school, but not have, you know, typical regular day of school. Somebody would go there and sit in the classroom. I would just, you know, be bad to get kicked out of the classroom. Parents would have to come pick me up, be like, Grandma, like, why?
That doesn't take in Spanish.
I'd be like, I don't know what you're saying, but you know, but okay, I just heard, you know, you're gonna get the bell. That's all I can remember. But yeah, it was just, that's how I took it. Like, okay, I'm not gonna amount to nothing. So what you're saying is that I'm never gonna be nothing. So you know, that kind of just stuck in me. You know, like, oh, okay, I'm really not, you know. So why should I better my life if I'm not gonna be nobody?
And it's a shame when I think about teachers who take that attitude, and there are a lot of teachers that do take that attitude because, in my opinion, they've been teaching for too long, and they you know, they're looking for the easy way out. Well, truth of the matter, this is not an easy world. Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break, and we'll be back with Gabriel to talk about his gang affiliation and where that led him. So we'll be right back with What's Up with That.
It's estimated that as many as 33 million people worldwide are still living with HIV. In the United States, we believe that as many as 60,000 are newly infected with the disease every year. And in San Francisco, that number is nearly 1,000. So AIDS is still with us, and it's still deadly. But so is the San Francisco AIDS Foundation, which started in 1982 when San Francisco was the epicenter of the disease. And as it has evolved, so has the San Francisco AIDS Foundation. And we are still here, still dedicating to ending these new HIV infections until one day, no one, anywhere, becomes infected with this terrible disease. We're still here, but we still need your help. We need your donations, we need you to volunteer, we need you to join us on AIDS Life Cycle, the AIDS Marathon, the AIDS Walk. As long as one of us has HIV, we are all living with the disease, and we still need you to be with us too.
All right, welcome back. We're here with Gabriel talking about his life. This is Gabriel's journey, and it's an incredible journey. Now, Gabriel, you had mentioned before about the gangs. So we know that there are a lot of gangs in our community. It's kind of kept low, sort of like secret. People have a hard time identifying gangs with the Silicon Valley, but we see them. We all know they're there. How did you find yourself joining a gang?
Like I said, from the uncles, you know, like seeing them wear their rags and, you know, like, you know, what's that? I want to be like that. you know, if you've seen the movie Goodfellas, how he does that phase, as far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. So it's kind of like that, you know, just be like, oh, I want to do it. I want to walk like that, talk like that, be like that. So basically that, like, it was like, turn on to me, like, oh, I want to be like that because, you know, that's the thing.
So did you like see people that were in the gangs and you started going up to them and talking to them? Or
yeah,
did
like
they
my
come to
friends, and be like, oh, you should get in this, you know, you should get in that, you know, but it was like, nah, you know, like, nah, I just want to play with my toys, you know, but it wasn't like that. It was just like, all right, you know, all right, I want to fit in.
Right.
So, you know, let's do this, you know, let's be, you know, a gang, you know, let's do what we got to do to, you know, protect each other, ourselves, you know, our neighborhood, you know, and the people around us. So that's how I end up, you know, be affiliated with them.
How does a gang function?
Well, I say a gang functions from the lack of, you know, the family. Like I said, you don't get what, you know, the family, you know, the love,
Right.
the caring, and all that stuff at home. So you go to the streets and your friends are with open arms, just like 7-Eleven, open 24 hours. Just, you know, just like,
Same art.
yeah, just like, oh, come here, you know,
Right.
money, you know, anything you want right there. So it's like, you know, this is my family now, you know.
So within the gang, is there like, then there's like the gang leader? Is there a hierarchy? Do you have to move up?
It depends, you know. Depends, you know, you could just be the bunch of friends, they call that a gang. You know, just bunch of people that grew up with each other.
Right.
They'll call that a gang. You know, carrying your rags, red, blue,
Right.
black, green, you know, gangs, you know, that's what they call gangs. But it was just more like friends I grew up with. So it just became like, we would do everything with each other. So I consider that a gang.
Yeah. And your family.
Yeah.
So you were shot
Yeah.
5 times, is that
Yes.
correct? Tell me about what led up to that, because that's pretty serious. And what happened?
Well, one night I was, you know, basically drinking. Me and my wife were, you know, fighting. So I said, you know, take me to my grandma's, you know, because that's all I know, you know. Where's the other place I'm going to run to? My grandma's. So take me to my grandma's. She dropped me off there. So I'm still, you know, drunk, wanting more. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to hit the store before they lock up the beer.
Okay,
You know,
yeah.
you know, I want to get, you know, my last call.
That's exactly, yeah.
But it didn't go that way, you know. I never made it, you know, to get the beer, because as I was going to the store, I happened to see a guy and a girl getting beat up by 3 other guys. So me being drunk and mad, so it's like I'm trying to be a superhero. Well, I'm going to go help them, you know, do a good deed. So as I do that, I'm fighting, you know, with them, with the guys. And then one of them pull out a gun. And they just shoot me 5 times.
Wow.
After that, it's just hospital.
Yeah.
You know, I can't really remember, you know, because there's like a blank in and out. But I mean, it's like, you know, really serious, because it does happen. You know, nowadays people don't fight with their fists. They rather take the easy way home and take your life.
Yeah. And that's interesting, because when you talk about gangs and this whole thing, how is life measured? You know, how what's the value of life in some of these? Like, if you said they're going to just take a gun and boom, then, you know, what is the perspective of life from a gang member?
Well, it's like, I don't care, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I'm going to do what I got to do. You know, if this is the only way I can beat you, then that's the way I'm going to do it. You know, if this is the only way I could take you down, if I can't beat you fighting, then I'm going to take you down with the gun and the knife. So that would be like the more, you know, this is the easy way out.
Yeah, and is there like a certain status by, you know, taking someone down with a gun? Does that earn you status within the group?
Well, not really. It's just like probably make people scared of you. You know, when people see you, be like, oh man, don't mess with that guy. He's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like, oh, you're gonna move up. You know, you're a general, or you know, you're the controller of the whole. You know, it's just like more power. You know, power thing. like a power trip,
Right.
like, oh,
Intimidation.
yeah, it's just more like that.
And there must be a very awkward situation when you see your enemies or whatever, and you're walking towards each other, and you know, what's going through your mind at that point?
Well, it's just like, well, I'm gonna get him before he gets me, because I ain't the one that's gonna look down, he is. So it's more like that, and that's how they see it. You know, we see it like, get him before he gets you.
So, was this the lowest point in your life, would you say?
Well, I'll say,
the
yeah,
shooting?
that was like the lowest point. Like, it was really messed. My life was really messed up. Like, I think that was the low. Yeah, like you say, the lowest. Like, I was at the bottom already. Like,
the bottom of
I
the
don't
barrel.
care. You know, like, my motto was, I don't care about nothing or no one.
Right.
You know, no one could tell me nothing. I'm my own person.
We're going to come back, take a short station break, and then we're going to learn what happened in Gabriel's life that saved him and brought him to God. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with Gabriel's journey.
I believe in nature.
I believe in the spirit.
I believe in trust. Beauty.
I believe in my mom. Strawberry ice cream.
Fortune cookies.
Chocolate.
I believe in
The tooth fairy.
being honest with yourself.
I believe in Santa Claus.
Aliens, of course. I believe what I want to believe.
I believe in myself.
I believe in myself. I believe in peace.
All right, welcome back. We're here with Gabriel, and it's an incredible story. Tell me, first of all, what inspired you to change your life?
Well, the whole getting shot thing, like, when I was laying in the hospital, not knowing if I was going to live or die, you know, then it finally clicked in my head, like, what are you going to do with your life, you know? Are you going to always be going out there, you know, committing crimes, you know, beating up people, you know, doing drugs? Yeah.
Penitentiary?
Yeah.
And so what happened?
My aunt came to see me, and she brought people from church. Like we say, Brother Ig. He was there when I, you know, came to see me when I was all not really, you know, myself. And then he had whispered in my ear, like, don't come out of this and think you're untouchable or Tupac, or, you know, or think you're the king of the world after this. You know, learn from your mistakes and do something better with your life. So then after that, when I woke up, you know, it was already in my head, like, dang, what am I gonna do? You know, do I want to do this all my life? You know, my kids almost didn't have a father.
Right.
So, you know, what do I want? So then that's what, you know, really was clicking, you know, just going in my head over and over, like playing over and over like a tape.
Like you'd reach the bottom of the barrel there.
Yeah.
And so what did you do then?
I just started thinking about going to church. That's what, it's like, dang, I should give it a try. You know, I've been to church, but, you know, it's like, oh man, is this over?
Yeah.
You know, like, dang, let's take it to
I know the story.
You know, like just sitting in the back with my head down, you know, like ashamed.
Yeah.
You know, when I shouldn't be. But that's how it was, like I'm ashamed, you know. But, you know, that when I was in there, I would have, you know, the chaplain come in. He'll pray for me. I would tell him, you know, pray for me, you know, that give me strength that, you know, I could go through this and, you know, that I'll change. So, you know, people would come and pray. So then that even more, then my wife come and I say, well, throw my stuff away, you know, my pipes and stuff. Throw it away, you know, I don't want to do it no more. She's looking at me like, are you serious? I'll go home right now. She's like, I'll go home. She did too. She went home and, you know, threw it all away, like, you know, real quick, like, oh, before he changes his mind. But, you know, that's what, she was even shocked because something coming out of my mouth like that was like shocked, you know, like, and then when I started, you know, talking different, people were like, are you all right? You know, did this shooting have effect on you or something, you know? But it didn't. You know, that's, you know, basically I just wanted to change my life because, you know, it was like I said, it's going downhill.
And so Brother Ig came. Brother Ig, by the way, is a Christian rapper here from the South Bay. He came and talked to you, and what did you then do? Okay, so you've decided now that you don't want to live like this anymore. and Brother Rig talked to you, and then once you got out of the hospital, what began to happen?
Well, I began to see my life change. Like, I began to stop hanging around the people I was hanging around with, doing the things I was, doing, and then finding myself, like in church on Sundays and Fridays, like more than I, was. And then I'll be like, dang, is this really happening?
Is this me?
Yeah, is this me? Like, what's going on? But then they say that, that's what happens when, you really, want to do something. So that's what I kept on, doing. And then I still, still am active in church. And I just never been the same ever since that.
What do you see that church and God has done for you?
Well, I see He gave me a second chance to do, start all over, make it right with my kids, my wife, my family, all the hurting, to make up for all that. Putting my wife through everything,
Right.
the shooting, through leaving, my
Fighting,
grandma, fighting, my grandma through, all the things I put her through,
Right.
Now showing her that I grow up.
Yeah.
And, becoming a man,
Right.
instead of a little boy. Like I would tell my brother, he's still doing the same thing. When I would tell him, are you going to be that little boy your whole life, or are you going to grow up and be a man and take responsibility? And he's like, oh, you're just telling me this because you go to church now. I said, no, I'm telling you this because I love you. And then, people see you and they be like, why are you talking like that? Because I changed,
Right.
That's how I feel, it's how I feel inside now. All that hurt, anger, like towards people is gone.
Right.
And God's helping, God helps me, through all that.
Do you have days when it's just really hard? It's really hard.
Well, they say the devil hits you all the time. He don't want to see you succeed. He don't want to see you doing the Lord's work. So yeah, there's a couple of times where I'm like, oh, how am I gonna do this, or how am I gonna get by, or maybe I should go out there and sell drugs again. That'll be the quick, trying to find an easy way out. But I don't. I just stay, praying and stay where I need to be, because that helps.
Right. Having lived the problem,
Yeah.
what kinds of things are you doing right now that?
Well, my church has a ceasefire thing, and they try to get rival gangs
Right.
to come together, the Norteños, Sureños. And sometimes I go with them, and tell my testimony, and tell them, what I've been through, how I did it, and where I'm at now. If I could do it, they could do it. There's, that's the only way you could do it.
Right. Going up to somebody and talking to them like that, what's their reaction?
Well, they're all like, oh, you're no good. So that's like saying you're not welcome around here.
Oh, really?
But I'd be like, I'm no good, like, I did this for myself, I never told on nobody, I never did anything, in jail where, I have to go put myself in protective custody or anything, Till this day, if I still go to jail, I could be in general population. But nah, I don't feel, scared. I just keep it real, I'm just trying to help people out because I'm tired of, seeing people, dying, my friends, family members, my loved ones, died just because of something that, was going around
Right.
from a long, from way back. I don't know when it started, but
Yeah, right. Break the cycle. What do you tell your children about if your children ask you, Daddy, what happened?
well, they know, but I mean, I don't try to get all, into it, be like, oh, because like me, I used to claim red. I used to hang around with the Norteños. So my enemies were the Sureños.
Right.
So
Those are two huge gangs,
yeah. So, and I'm telling my kids, I don't want them to just, one of my kids like red and one of my kids like blue. So it's like, I'm going to tell them, no, you can't wear that blue. It's not the point. It's just a color. You could wear whatever you want. I don't want my kids growing up to know that, to get there,
To
because
get that mentality.
yeah, because, they fight over, oh, don't sit on my color red or don't sit on my color blue. That's my color. You know, I say, no, that's my color. It belongs to me. You know, but you know, I just don't want them to live the lifestyle I did.
Right.
So I just don't, like, when they know why I got shot, but they don't know, you know, it was by a gang. You know, it was
Right.
through gangs. So I just like, oh no, I got shot because Daddy was out there doing what he was supposed to do.
Okay.
You know, and God woke him up. So
Right.
that's what I, you know, tell him.
Okay, we have about 30 seconds left of the show. What final message would you like to give to our viewers about Gabriel and his story?
Well, to say, like, a saying that I heard was, boys make excuses, men make changes. So just say, if I could get out of it, they could too. You know, you don't have to care what people think. You know, just do what you feel in your heart. You know, if you want to make a change, do it.
Right.
If you feel, you know, a tugging in your heart, change. And, you know, that's all I got.
Well, you made it. Congratulations. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a
Thank
very
you.
great story. And let this be a lesson to all of you out there, of our viewers who may feel themselves in the same situation that Gabriel was in, that, you know, take responsibility, choose to change your life. You don't have to end up that way. There's so many opportunities. They're really out there. You just have to, like you said, be man enough or whatever to go out and get them and you know, look for peace. We need peace in this world. And I think Gabriel's story certainly testifies to that. So to our viewing audience, as always, if you're walking down the street and you see something interesting and you wonder to yourself, hey, what's up with that? Well, tune into our show, What's Up With That, and maybe you'll find exactly what you're looking for. We'll see you next week on What's Up With That. Good night, everybody.